Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, is the de facto leader of the kingdom, and now in a cabinet reshuffle, he has been named as the prime minister, a post that is usually reserved for the kingdom's king. MBS was appointed as the heir to the throne in June 2017, but his growing prominence has never been more apparent. He has sought to position himself as a champion of moderate Islam. The Crown Prince's 2030 vision is that of a new Saudi Arabia, one that is economically diverse and more tolerant. Riyadh wants to diversify its economy away from oil and to attract more investors and tourists. Since then, he has overseen sweeping social changes, allowing women to drive, opening recreational outlets, and now even allowing rave parties. But ironically, all this has come alongside a crackdown on dissent and free speech. Many believe MBS has benefited from the king's longevity. His ongoing presence conveys traditional authority. It covers up for MBS's youth or any unconventional actions that he may be taking, but rarely impedes them. But for the last 3 years, the king has been mostly absent. Throughout the meetings, trips, even summits, the crown prince has been the man in charge. In fact, in the last 2 years, King Salman has made very few public appearances. During the pandemic, he was mostly staying in Neom. His meetings with world leaders have also been rare. In May, the king was hospitalized for treatment. The 37-year-old currently in charge of major portfolios, including the economy, defense, oil, internal security. So MBS's appointment as the prime minister hardly makes a difference. But the details lie in the timing. This comes right before a court hearing, into the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who was killed in a Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Many have questioned MBS's role in this killing, so the new role is likely to offer him immunity ahead of the lawsuit. Currently, MBS holds all the reins of Saudi power. He does not seem bothered by who knows it as well. This is because MBS has no real competitors. Since his rise to power, he has driven out one rival after another, inside or outside the royal family. So MBS's path to the throne seems clear. The king is no longer in the picture, and for many, MBS is no longer a king in the making. He is a king in the palace. With me on the broadcast this minute is Amina Bakr from Dubai. She is the chief OPEC correspondent and deputy bureau chief at Energy Intel. Thanks very much, Amina, for being here. What do you make of this announcement and its timing?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, I mean, it's not really a big surprise that MBS becomes, or Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince, becomes prime minister. It was kind of already filling that role, and it was turning a kind of de facto situation into giving him the formal title of a role which he was already fulfilling. So when the announcement came in, sure, it was a little bit of a surprise in terms of timing because we never really know what happens at cabinet meetings. Cabinet reshuffles usually contain some surprises, but ultimately it makes sense for Mohammed bin Salman to become the prime minister. And it removes any kind of awkwardness now when he meets with heads of state. He's now representing the Saudi government. So in terms of protocol, representation, formal titles, etc., it all makes sense.
Right, Amina, let's talk about how the Saudi Crown Prince has always touted himself as the modernizer, and that is the image that the kingdom wants to portray to the world. But at the same time, this has come with a crackdown on dissent, with the suppression of freedoms and rights being a major concern.
That's something that was highlighted a lot in the press and in the news, and it doesn't mean that it didn't exist before. This kind of suppression to rights, people getting jailed for certain things, etc., did exist before King Salman became king. It was always the case. And it's not only the case for Saudi Arabia. I can talk about this for the entire Middle East and even beyond the Middle East. These are things that happen in all countries. Perhaps it's more prominent now because you have a new leader that wants to change things. The pace of the change is really fast in Saudi Arabia. So of course it's highlighting. I won't lie to you, of course, and say that things like the Khashoggi murder didn't take a toll on the kingdom's reputation. It did, and it's something that the kingdom needed to address quickly. And that's why you saw the trials happening and people responsible for the brutal murder had to go into trial and face sentencing, etc. So that's how a civilized nation deals with quote unquote what they call a mistake or things that happen that are out of their hands. You need to go through a trial and jury system.
All right, since you also mentioned that, where do you see the ties between Saudi Arabia and the US headed in the near future? And like you said, diversification of the Saudi economy away from oil, what would that really look like?
Well, relations with the US were definitely warmer under the Trump administration. Under the Biden administration, we felt things cooling off a little bit, less cooperation, less areas that they have in common. However, the relationship still exists, and the Saudi-US relationship in particular is not something that's related to administrations. There are alliances between these two countries that they go beyond administrations. So they do have to keep good ties. We saw Biden come to Saudi Arabia, to Jeddah. Sure, it's a cooler reception, and it was reported that it was a cooler reception compared to the one of Trump, and it was always going to be a comparison. However, relations are still there. They disagree on a few points, more than a Republican administration. But I see efforts from both sides to keep things aligned and going, and there is cooperations on many levels. In terms of your diversification questions, there are many areas that the kingdom is investing in. They're using the vehicle, which is called the Public Investment Fund, which is the sovereign wealth fund. They're investing in areas such as infrastructure, tourism, real estate, renewable energy. They're acquiring stakes in companies abroad, etc. So there's a big range of sectors, and they're trying to also not focus in one area, so they have a good spread of risk.
Amena, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.